Hello everyone, I am with Tim Reilly, who has had a very exciting last couple of weeks. Be sure to check out his Twitter, BTW, if you missed it. Also on the Poker News homepage at the moment, there's a full-on article about a hand with you and Maurice, which is interesting, but you guys check it out. It's all broken down there. I want to go back just a little bit farther. I've been trying to get Tim for a while. You were in an interesting spot where you received a penalty last week. So for those who just don't know, catch us up a little bit about what happened.
It was a spot where I had the nuts on the river. On a 4-line board, it was ace, king, queen, 10 board where like a jack made a straight. And I'd flopped the nuts and just checked to an opponent, another reg who I play with a lot. And I check called 2 streets, and in the river, I get counterfeited on the river, and I checked again, and he bets big. And it's a spot where I know that he's either bluffing or folding. Bluffing, or if I raise, he just instantly folds, or we have the same hand. So at that point, I decided it was more valuable for me to just call and see which hands he is bluffing with, and if he has any kind of bluffs in his hands. I think that's way more valuable for me than to just raise, and he re-raises, and we both put our chips in the middle, which is an obvious spot where we're both going to be chopping and wasting everyone's time. So I elected to just call and see his hand. We were chopping. He had river to chop, but he was bluffing before that, like I had thought.
And you got to see his hand?
Yeah, I wanted to see if he was bluffing, or he just had a pair and turning it into a bluff, or if he had some type of showdown and he was turning it into a bluff. We play a lot together, and the poker world's not that big, so it just seemed to me it would be way more valuable to be able to see where my opponent's bluffing and where he's not. And I called, and the whole table at that point, it said the same thing. They understood why, and I shouldn't have got a penalty, but the floor was going by the letter of the law, said he needs to give me a penalty. He can make it a full round, but he's going to make it 2 hands. And I wasn't happy about it just because of the situation. Like I even said before, I obviously know that I'm supposed to raise here, but it's super beneficial for me just to call and see these chopping rather than raise. He never calls with the next hand down, which would be pocket aces. He couldn't even have aces in the spot, like the spot where he would have re-raised aces for sure in this dynamic. So like the only hand he can have is a chop or a bluff. So it's just I thought it was way better for me just to call and see the bluffs or call and see the chops. And
it's more plus EV overall. But so talk to me a little bit then. How does it even get to the spot where the floor is called? Did your opponent ultimately say?
No, that was what really annoyed me. It was the dealer instantly spoke up and said you have to raise, and the whole table unanimously said no, it's okay in this spot. We're deep in the marathon. It was all really good players at this point left, and they have a lot of regs, and there's a lot of other game into like a lot more game than just like that. It's also the fact that if I do call there and he has some 6-7 napkins and he has to table it with 35 left, that's a metagame.
Everyone else wants to see it too.
Everyone wants to see it, and he has to then shrink into his little hole and play like it's a mental game. So by me making him table a bluff, it's far easier for him to just raise and then just put his hand in the muck and forget about it. Nobody sees what he had. So
for those who don't understand, right, can you talk a little bit about why this rule ultimately exists, and maybe when it's not such an obvious like fold or shove spot?
This rule existed when they played poker with 40 guys and 30 of them were friends. Now you're playing with hundreds of people. So if somebody wants to dump their stack to somebody on day one, go ahead. I've been chip leader on day one millions of times and not cashed. So it doesn't matter this early. It's late in the tournament, the same thing. Like, nobody's going to take a spot where they're just going to dump their their stack to somebody else because this person's a better player. It doesn't matter anymore. It's so much variance involved that it's far better for you both to stay and play your best poker. So it's there for when 2 people are in a hand on the river. So if I have the nut flush and you have a set and you bet the river and I raise, if we're friends, it's so that you have to like play your hand optimally and keep raising if you have the nuts. I think it's more applies to when there's like a single nut board, when there's only 1 nuts. If there's like a flush and there's 1 nut, or if there's 1 boat. But on a board where there's a 4-liner and a straight, and the 4 people could actually have a straight. Like, what about if it's just Broadway on board? Do we have to just keep raising our chips and wasting everyone's time?
Right.
So there's scenarios where you can make an argument where it made sense at one time. I still don't think it makes sense at all. If somebody wants to be stupid enough to not raise the nuts on the river, poker's getting tough. You go ahead and do that.
Well, and it's interesting because actually this is something that's come up not this specific situation, but something that's come up a few times this summer so far has been more or less that maybe some tournament directors need to have a little bit more leeway to make choices looking at mitigating circumstances and less black and white situations. Would you agree?
I thought that they did, actually, and I was told a few times that the floor at any point can make any decision regarding any situation. And I've still heard back and forth. I've also heard that this is like a TDA rule, not a TDA rule. I've heard that it's a WSOP rule, it's not a WSOP rule, and then I've also heard afterwards that from another floor that no, it's not a penalty anymore. So I don't even know the rule anymore. I think
And
that
there's
we
so many places at this point. It's like, how can anyone keep up?
Exactly. I think we should need some kind of more like uniform rules in poker for these gray areas, because there's a lot of these rules that were made in like the 70s that really don't have any point of anymore, and they just kind of hurt the growth of the game altogether. So.
And don't take in the mitigating circumstances, like the difference between this type of a hand versus another one. Well, of course, something for you guys to think about. Let us know what you think. I'd love to hear in your comments. I talked to a few other pros who also agreed that this is a very outdated, rule at this point. So, just like everything else in poker, we're always moving forward. We're always changing. Let's take a look, guys. Let's see what's next. Thank you so much for taking time. I appreciate it. Tim
Thanks,
Reilly,
guys.
you guys are on PokerNews.com.